Hey, y'all, and welcome back to Bliss to Abundance podcast. I'm Kelli Hayes Smith, your host here at Wanderlust Campus. And today I'm talking with Stephanie from Travefy, and we are digging deep into the art that is itinerary planning. If you want to learn all about the best itinerary tips and tricks and mistakes not to make, keep listening to this podcast.
Welcome to Bliss to Abundance, the podcast for growth-minded travel entrepreneurs.
Hey, y'all, and welcome back to the Bliss to Abundance podcast. I am hanging out today with Stephanie from Travefy. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Always so much fun hanging out with you and everyone else from Wanderlust Campus.
We love having Travefy as part of our partnerships. So, Stephanie, tell everyone a little bit about you.
Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, again, really excited to be here. Seriously, love you all. The partnership is amazing. But I am Stephanie. So I am Stephanie Gries from Travefy, Senior Education Manager. And so I actually started at Travefy. It'll be 10 years in June.
Wow.
So that was my entry into the travel industry. So I've been here this whole time, which has been so much fun. Love the travel industry. But it's also been really fun because Travefy is on the tech side. And so it's really cool to just watch the tech side of the industry grow, but also just work alongside with travel advisors we've been through pandemic, we've seen a lot of shifts and all that good stuff. So there's been so much. So it's been fun. And I love doing like education stuff. So that's why I think we get along so well, because I love the education side of the industry too.
Yep. And that's all we do. So we are really excited to talk to you all about this because this is one of the things that Travefy is known for. But today we're going to dive deep into creating itineraries for travel agents. And I think this is something, so I was a travel agent and I tried to do itineraries, but I was using Canva doing things on my own because I'm sure Travefy was out there, but in our area, like I hadn't been introduced to it yet. And so I was trying to just muck my way through it. And I think there are so many things for people to learn, but a good itinerary can really set apart a travel agent. The personalization, the customization, that's something Costco's never going to give a traveler.
100%.
So let's talk a little bit about those itineraries. So if you had to think about it, what would you say the most important components are of a really good itinerary?
Oh, yes. And I think 100% what you said, that is exactly what's going to set you apart. And we hear that all the time. It helps you look professional. And it also, like the traveler, which I know we'll get into, there's so many other aspects that just make it such a cool experience. But I think the most important elements are kind of the things that you think of with travel details, accommodations, activities. But then other notes, I think one of the big things is, I know for me personally, when I'm traveling, I now will not travel. Even if it's a road trip, I will have an itinerary because I need to be able to quickly look up and see any details, like any confirmation numbers. That's a huge thing. You don't want to miss out on the details like that. And documents. I think having documents also is just so huge. Like one good example is I'll have, I do my itinerary on an app, which you might have a paper PDF printed out or go online, but I always use the app. And that way, when I come in and I check my bag, I go to the check-in kiosk, and you know how it always asks what's your confirmation number, or put this, the quickest thing is just enter the confirmation number. So I just pull up my app and I look it up and I know it's there, and I just get on my way and save minutes, and those minutes add up so quickly. But then it's also just so nice to be able to pull up those documents whenever you're traveling and if you need them, all that good stuff. But then I think it's also really cool if you have your essential itinerary with travel details, but I think where you really start to make the experience and bring it to life is also adding photos, videos, guides, things to do, if they have an open day, still putting in some things. So they're just always kind of going to that itinerary. They have this go-to place for their entire trip is so important.
And I think it's it can build the excitement as they're watching that itinerary being planned. It just builds that excitement. And the more excited they are, the more they're going to tell people about you and what you're doing for them. So I think that is so good. So if you're looking at these itineraries and you all talk to tons of travel advisors all the time, you're seeing what they're building. What do you think the most common mistakes that these travel advisors are making when they're creating these itineraries?
Oh, yeah. I think the number one mistake is missing details, not noticing things like dates. Like if something changes or, because sometimes you might have, so flights, like flight updates they change usually. So like in our app, they'll change. In most apps, they'll change and they'll update. But sometimes, let's say like a cruise, you might have a cruise put into the itinerary and your client printed it off. And maybe that cruise, there's maybe, hopefully not, but maybe there's a hurricane and they have to change destinations a
Ports,
little
yeah.
bit, that kind of stuff. And not being able to update things or keep things, that could be, I mean, the client could miss a complete flight by stuff
Yeah.
being wrong, and then that just costs you. And so I think that's the biggest mistake, or just not looking at it thoroughly. Because I think the other good thing is, we think of the itineraries for the traveler, but it's also for the travel agent, because it gives you the opportunity to make sure, like, to look it through, make sure, yeah, you're not overloading
Yeah.
a day, or everything's syncing up, and it just keeps you organized too. So
Well,
I
it's
think
like when
that's a
you
big
look at that map, it's like if something's out of whack, you should be able to see it like a sore thumb if it's like out there
yeah.
in an entirely neat and organized space.
I think so too. I think that's the thing, is you'll catch it. You will 100% catch it, because I know when you're doing your own trip, you'll always be like very, very detailed. So that's why it's just, looking at it, being able to see everything in there. And then the one last thing I would mention too about like a common mistake that we can see just like on through Travefy is sometimes they don't make sure, the advisor doesn't make sure that the client is getting the itinerary before they leave.
Mm.
That's a huge one. And so I see a lot of people are starting to build it into their workflows where,
Oh, yeah.
a couple weeks or a week before their trip, they'll send out an email, like automate it and be like, make sure you download the app, or make sure you view this. Or sometimes my favorite thing that I hear is when advisors, it's part of the process that before they go, they get on like a Zoom and they actually just pull up the itinerary and go through it.
I think that's what's important. And actually, going into what my next question for you, that's a perfect segue because, again, what Costco won't do for you is the personalization of a trip.
Yeah.
And so it should not be so faceless or hands off or transactional that they literally could have called a Costco and booked this trip. So my next question is straight into that. Like if you have a one-on-one with them and you go through their itinerary, you've made this a very relational transaction and not just a transactional thing. How else can you like incorporate personalization both for the client, but how can the agent like really put their brand, and I don't just mean logos and such. I mean like put some of their heart into these itineraries and make sure that it's really personalized for each like traveler.
Yes. Oh, I love this question because I've seen the coolest things. So, well, one, okay, so the top one that always comes to mind that it's very a lot easier is really just putting in your own photos, videos, your own notes. And of course that'd be like for those destinations that you're very familiar with. So maybe some trips you might not be able to do that much, add in your own like I love going to this place. You're going to love it. Things like that. And stuff like that, by the way, too, that content you can always save that type of stuff, whether you're making it in Canva or you're using a tool like Travefy, just save that kind of stuff because that's going to be really easy to pull in. And then also, again, like your own photos, videos. But here's some fun things I've seen. Playlists. I've seen where people will put together a music playlist like on Spotify or
I
like on YouTube,
love
anywhere, and you can just link it in, or movie or book recommendations to watch or read before the trip, or during. And that is so cool. And
I think
again,
that's
that's so
so
cool.
cool.
Yeah. And you can save that stuff too. Like just save that content. Like if you're going to Paris, here's what I recommend.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
And like I think about like if you're talking about like music, like all this entire playlist, like you just said, Paris. Of course, it's I slide Taylor into everything I possibly can. But
Love
she's
it.
got a song called Paris, right? Like, can you add like all of these are all songs that mention Paris, or these are all books that take place in the area that you're going to, or these are all movies that were filmed where you're going. I think that would be so much fun.
It's so cool. And it's actually really easy to research, like, especially when putting that stuff together is pretty easy because you got your good old friend, ChatGPT
Exactly.
AI, like things like that. And it's not that hard to put it all together. And I mean, if someone were giving me that and I were just getting so, I mean, that is so unbelievably memorable. It's so cool.
And you think about that, that's what people are going to go tell somebody about. They're
Yeah.
going to be like, before we left, she sent us this entire list of books that were written about where we were going. Or these were all like, let's say that you're going to like Atlanta, and that's a random place to pick, but like The Walking Dead was filmed there, and like Stranger Things, and like just little facts about like pop culture that are there. And that may not be what they're going for or going to check out, but like as you're driving by this restaurant, remember this scene was filmed there. Look it up, and maybe a link to YouTube that has the scene that they're going, like that they would see there. That's, yes, it might take a minute. Yeah, if it's just a list, it won't take any time. But if you were linking things in, or a playlist could take some time, but you can use it forever. It's evergreen. It's not a one time thing. And it really would set you apart.
Yes, 100%. And you know what else? I just thought of this as you were saying that is one other thing is those could start opening the doors to potential additional bookings that they might not have known they want to do. Because if you say like, "Oh, Walking Dead," and they're like, "Wait, I'm a huge Walking Dead fan," and hey, guess what? There's actually a tour. Should we book that for you? I mean, it kind of starts opening that to like the
Yeah,
potential of
exactly. 100%. And you could even attach like a form or something like that with it that's like all of it about, and then that's this whole like pop culture thing. And maybe it's going to maybe it's London, and you're sending things, and one of them is a Harry Potter thing, and it's like, PS, did you know there's a Harry Potter tour? If you're interested in this, make sure you let me know and I'll book it for you. And then you've made bonus commission, and it's not like a hard sell. You're giving them the information that's interesting, and you're just kind of sliding that in. I think that's such a great idea.
I know. That's probably my favorite like tip of all time for
I love
itineraries.
that. So, on that note, when you're personalizing it, and I think those fun things are one thing, but how do you balance giving clients the right information, the right amount of information? Because they could drown in information overwhelm if you're not careful. And so, you don't want to overcomplicate the process. So, what is that balance, and how do you find it?
Yes, that's a really good question because we will hear that sometimes. Like, we have destination guides that people will add in, and sometimes their clients love them, and some clients might be like, "This is too much." Like, I didn't actually really pay attention to my itinerary because it was just so much information. And so, a couple of things that I think can help. One is breaking them down into
Mm.
sections. So, one thing that you can do that I've seen people do that I think is really helpful is like in Travefy or again any other itinerary that even if you're making them in Canva, you can still do this. Is you have like all of their trip information, there. So and maybe even have a summary of it at the top at the beginning of it. So it's
Mm.
like they can still go and get the overview and then they can go deeper in. But then also like in our itinerary builder, you can create other sections and you can just make them go appear at the bottom. But one thing that I've seen advisors do that makes it not too overwhelming is they'll automate it and do it like let them know that there's new additions to their itinerary, as it's leading up to the trip. So take for example the movies and stuff. Maybe that's not in there in the initial booking and finalization, but then starting to 30 days before you add it in and you send them an email and say, "Hey, check this out. I just added this." And then maybe 2 weeks later, you have another thing or things like even packing lists. I know, because I know Wanderlust
Yeah.
Campus has packing lists, and that's great stuff too. And also, the thing that I like about that one, for example, is that is actually a PDF, so it's not like it's a long list on the itinerary. It's just a link to almost go out to that. So then that way, it also doesn't overwhelm
Yeah.
so much
That's a really
text in
great
one
point.
place too.
And I didn't even think about dripping in the information, but that's
Mhm.
super smart. Like setting on your workflow that you're going to add this to their itinerary at the appropriate time. Like you don't need to add their packing list upon booking. They're not packing
Yeah.
now. So go in and add 14 days before your packing list, and you have an email that goes out to them that says, your itinerary has been updated to include your packing list. get excited, time to get excited, whatever. But that also has those constant, from the marketing standpoint. Yes, I know that they've already booked with you, but in the client journey, you're still marketing to them. Every little piece that you do is still a marketing piece, because you're trying to make sure they repeat book with you and they tell their friends. And that's just another client touch point of, rather than just dropping everything in and walking away, you're giving yourself reason to touch base with them and make sure that let them know what all you've done. Because if they get everything at once, especially if they've booked, let's say 9 months out, and it's all there, they see all that information. Number one, that's when it's overwhelming, because they're getting everything at once. And it's not all useful information at this moment. Like, if your packing list is not worth anything to you 9 months ahead of time, and you're gonna, then the mom or the woman is gonna say, I'm making a mental note that that's there, and then she's gone, she's gone to do something else, and she's forgotten it. But if they get it right at the 2 week mark, and you mention, and you get to send them an email that says, I've updated your itinerary to include that, it makes them think that you're constantly thinking about them, that it's not been this one drop and then you're gone. And I think that's
Yep.
massive.
It's huge. And just like you said, you're creating lifelong clients with that. That's
Yeah,
exactly what
that's
you're
your
doing.
goal for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So that's awesome. When it comes to organizing these things, especially if you're going to drip some of this information out, like, what tools can you do all of that right inside the itinerary planner? Are you going to need to bring in your CRM? What does that look like?
Yeah. So, well, in terms of, so like with Travefy for what we do, and again, there's other tools out there that are very similar too, where basically you can just keep everything in that one place, and like I was mentioning with the content, because this is one of the things that I think is really amazing. With Travefy, that really helps to, again, everything we're talking about, set you apart, make you look awesome, is saving content to reuse, because you also need to save time. So you don't also want to like spend so many hours every single itinerary you're building. Like, that's not feasible. So if you can save content, I think that's the huge thing. And you also can have your CRM like in built into that as well, because we have where you can keep your client contact information. You can even have forms in there. So everything's kind of living in one place. And that's the point of what we're trying to do, is make it easy for you to access everything. But that content library, huge. But then the other thing I think that's really nice is also having the mobile app. So this is something going back to how I mentioned, being for almost 9.5 years now, and watching the tech just grow in the industry. The biggest thing is that mobile app, the
Yeah.
mobile app for the client. Because of course you're going to have some clients that probably do not want that. Like, it's just a thing. There's some clients that are still like, I just want to print it off. That it's like, I don't need an app, and that's fine. But there's a majority actually will want that mobile app. And I think that is a thing. And there's so many advisors now, they'll come up to us at conferences and they'll be like, I know I have to use this because I need an app for my clients. And that's the reason. That's literally the reason why.
And app creation is so expensive. And
Yeah.
so if you were to create as an individual company, or like an individual travel agent trying to create a mobile app, that's insane. It's so expensive. And this is a long time ago. Again, I would tell people to screenshot the Canva things that I sent them, so that they would, and create an album on their phone for it. So that's like how long it's been. And
Oh.
while that wasn't an app, it was trying to make it mobile. And that's actually my next question for you. It's essentially, how can we make sure that they're accessible on different devices? But you just answered it. Like, making sure that they have the information in the way they want to consume it.
100%. And I think the other thing too is this is where I think it's really important to implement in your workflow, that before they leave, get on that call, or just figure out a way that you're making sure that they have it downloaded, or they've decided, oh, I just want the PDF. And you tell them like, okay, that's fine, but know that if I make any changes, you will not see that on this PDF. Because with our mobile app, you can do a couple things where you can download it to your phone or your iPad, tablet. But then the other thing is you have an option to turn it on offline. So that way, make sure they do stuff like that. So that way, and then also make sure like, if you're going to utilize the chat component of it, make sure, tell them like, here's how you can stay in touch. Or maybe you decide that's not how you're staying in touch, you turn that off. So I think just getting all of that set up before they leave is huge.
And this goes back to making sure that you have systems in your business.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be communicating with one client in one way and one client in another way.
Yep, exactly.
Um, All right. What do I have next? Oh, what are the so visual elements, maps, photos, icons, things like that in your itinerary? I feel like travel's such an important, like, it's visual. Like, we picture, if you are going to Paris, the picture in your mind is the Eiffel Tower and the bakeries on the street, right? If you're going on a cruise, your picture is the open sea or a beautiful beach. Like, we're visually creating a picture in our head when we think about travel. So obviously that itinerary should also have some of those visual elements, plus going back to making sure that people can consume things in the way that they learn or whatever. Some people are visual learners, some people want to read it, some people want to print it out and have a hard copy. How can you add those visual elements to an itinerary so that you can actually maximize how people can consume it?
Yeah, I think that, and that's the cool thing about an itinerary is adding this, like bringing it to life. You're bringing that trip 100% to life. And I think that the cool thing is just adding like those photos or those videos, the maps. Again, one thing too that I think is really cool. I've seen some advisors do this, and I've done this for my own personal itineraries, is dropping in a Google map like walk, because sometimes the other thing, and again, you could be in Paris and you aren't getting very good at Wi-Fi, or like the data, or your just
Right.
coverage just isn't very good. And so you're like, I don't know, how do I walk to this place? Like, I know it's only a 10-minute walk, but how do I get there? And so you can drop in things, you can do things like that. And you can make sure that stuff is available offline, because you can download it, things like that. And again, you're just putting it in the itinerary. So no matter what they need, it's there, and they're clicking out to go see it, and all that stuff. So I think, yeah, whenever you can add those photos, or again, just add that video or Google Map, or maybe it's a PDF document that they go out to, no matter what it is, I think you definitely should have that stuff, because it just makes it a lot more fun, but also helpful.
I have another idea. This is the marketing brain in me, but here we go. Um, so I think it would be so much fun if a travel advisor would like pick a spot. Let's say that that it's a cruise, and that almost all cruise lines have, self-serve ice cream on demand. You walk up, you get the cone of ice cream on demand. If you share a picture of yourself with a cone of ice cream and you say, I make sure you share one photo to this album of you and your family with this ice cream cone. And then as a marketing thing, you start growing that album, and you are challenging them. Or let's say you go to Key West or Cozumel on a cruise, and there's that sign, and you take a picture there, and you ask all, not like require them, that's not what I mean, but like you challenge all the people who are going to that to have the same photo. And then you have a collection of all the people who have ever traveled with you to that spot in that one place. And then you grow that album and you showcase that on your marketing. Like, look at how many people I have sent to this area. I know this like the back of my hand. That could be really fun too. And then they feel like they're part of something.
That is such a cool idea. Ooh, I like that idea a lot. That's
That
really
could be
cool.
so fun. Like, you could
Yeah.
do some sort of like reel at the end of the year, or TikTok if it's not gone, at the end of the year, that shows all of the people that have gone to that same spot that you've told them to go to. Or maybe it's your favorite restaurant in Paris and you tell them to go there. Like, doesn't have to be something super touristy. That's the creativeness behind it. But that could be really fun to like have a challenge of take a photo here and then send it to me. And maybe then they get like a $10 Starbucks gift card because that's giving you marketing. So
That is really, I love that. Well, and then another thing too, kind of on that, is what you could do. I've seen people do is they'll put in the itinerary, like at the bottom or the top, they'll put their social media links. So then
yes.
that way, or tags, like if they also are like, oh, do use this tag, if some of them might have that's a cool thing too. So then that way it's like, oh, if you want to share things and
Yeah.
remind, that's cool.
And could you add those types? So you can add that type of stuff to your content or to your
Oh yeah.
itinerary. That's a really great idea. How do you want them to share your information? And I think that's a great idea. Actually, that's leading me to my last question, which is like, what are your top tips for creating itineraries that you have seen people do, but then the clients just rave about it? They love the things. And I think we've talked about a lot, but like, let's condense it all to like the end.
Yes. Oh man, now I wish I would have saved my the one earlier, the playlist, because that was cool. The playlist and the movie recommendations,
Love
the
that.
people who have done that, like, it's so cool. But I think the top tip, is also so okay, yeah, that's what I would say for like for clients to rave about it is honestly just making sure implementing that itinerary into your actual workflow and making sure that they're using it and showing the value of why and then adding those really fun things like any additional stuff or like here's some ideas that we can book for you as well, anything like that. I think that's automatically going to raise the bar
Mm-hmm.
because it's
I
going to
agree.
show like wow, this is part of the process, this is so exciting, this is really cool. And I hear all the time that clients will show their friends and family their itinerary. They'll be like, look at
Oh
look
yeah,
at this
it's
app.
kind of a humble brag thing, right?
It is. It
Yeah.
totally is. Yes. And that's the thing. And it kind of instills a little bit of FOMO because then, if clients, if you can tell your clients, like, hey, you feel free, you can share this with other people. I mean, of course, you might decide like there might be sensitive information. So tell them to proceed with
Well, and you
caution.
want to be
But
careful because you don't want to just send out your itinerary to other people because then they
yeah.
just go book the trip and you've provided all that work on the itinerary and they've just done it on their own. So,
Yeah, and I think that's why it's so important to have that good workflow because then you're showing like, yeah, I mean, again, kind of with the Costco thing, like they can give you an itinerary, but it's not going to be fun. Like it's not,
it
and you're not getting that one-on-one
you're
personalization.
not getting, and that's the other part of the itinerary. The itinerary should highlight how personalized you made the trip for them because you could send 5 people to Tokyo in 1 month and every trip looked different based on what it is that
Mhm.
they want to see. Are they into the architecture or are they into the fashion? Are they into, like, are they into food or are they into hike? Like everything could look different based on what interests them in that area. And that itinerary should really be highlighting how curated you make a vacation.
Yes, absolutely. And that's where if you do these additional additions and doing things like that, that is going to show because then when someone looks at, they're like, oh well, I'm not really into that though. So I probably just would skip that. But it's like, well, if you work with us, we can actually find what you want to do instead,
Yep.
which is huge. So I think that's a big
That
one.
honestly is content right there, just on a
Mhm.
marketing level for travel agents. It's like, do you want this itinerary? And I would, if I was going to publicize one, it would be one that was like super niche. Like maybe it's someone who like is like wants to travel with their dogs. And so everything you've done is like dog friendly stuff, right? It's like, this is highlighting a dog park and a dog friendly resort and all the dog friendly restaurants, like something that's really super niche so that it's not general enough for people to copy you, but like, so it's super niche, but talking about and also showcasing the fact that Costco would have sent you here and told you, yes, this hotel accepts pets. Sure, they would do that. They're not going to come down and show you, make sure that there is a dog park within half a block of where you're staying, and this restaurant allows you to bring your dog inside, and all of these things that you've focused on. And so you could put them side by side and say, which itinerary do you want? What
Yes.
do you want out of your vacation?
Yes, I love that. See, it's such a good idea. Well, and then that was the last thing that I'll mention is for so that's for like with clients and stuff. But I think on your end for the travel agent is one thing that's good is having itineraries like that ready to go and having the content. Because I've been saying that earlier, but I truly believe like making yourself set up for success and just having content
Yeah.
ready to be reused and itineraries because you can always copy that. So you do have like the examples like you just said, and then you can copy it. And if you're just tweaking certain things, you can. And
Yeah,
I
you
think
should
that just helps.
never be creating it twice. Once
Yes.
you may
Hmm.
refresh it or it may get a tweak based on person, but you should never be creating twice. Once you've
Hmm.
created it once, it should be there for you to reuse, reuse, reuse. If you're not repurposing, you're working too hard.
Yes, that's well said. Because I think that's the biggest thing. Because when you do first start, like if you're not really doing a lot of itinerary stuff right now, it will take a little bit of effort and work to get it all
Sure.
up and moving. And yeah, and it just will be built up over time. But then again, it's part of your workflow and it starts becoming like very, very simple.
And the other part of that is when you put it all together, like when you're building their itinerary, that is valuable training time. You are having to do the research, so you're learning
Yeah.
about it. So it's not just pouring in time into this one trip where I'm building an itinerary. You're gaining valuable, why is that word hard for me today? Knowledge and experience on each individual thing. And I think that that's super important.
It is. It really is. And I know I love I was thinking that too that you'll kind of build them naturally over time as you get different locations
Yeah.
and family types and niches and stuff. So it's so much fun. I I swear it's not biased because I'm with Travefy, but I absolutely love putting together itineraries, and I put together my family's itineraries sometimes. I'm like, send me your stuff, I'll do it for you.
That's so
It's
fun. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Stephanie, thank you for hanging out with me today. Can you tell everyone where they can find more info on you and Travefy?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you just go to travefy.com, you can see all of our stuff. And again, like as Kelli mentioned, we started as an itinerary builder years ago. And so we've added so many cool features just in the past few months too, that for just content and itineraries. But then we also have a lot of other features and tools built in as well for marketing, CRM, organization, forms, all kinds of stuff. So if you just go to travefy.com, you can start a free trial. We just give you a trial. You can play with it right now after listening to this. But then also I recommend, we do demos and we have a lot of like one-on-one trainings and stuff like that. So if you like to just try things out on your own, do that. But then also if you want a little more help, know that we're here and you can always schedule a demo with us too.
That's awesome, guys. All of those links will be down below in the show notes or description. Stephanie, it was so good to talk with you.
Same to you.
And I will say, when this episode airs, it's actually going to air on Monday the 20th. We will be making some announcements together later this
Woo!
week. So, guys, keep your eyes peeled for some information coming out from our two companies in joint statements and initiatives. So, that's all I'll say about that right this second.
Exciting.
All right. We'll talk with you soon, Steph. Thanks.
Thanks.
Hey guys, Cyndi Williams here. If you like that last video, make sure you check out all of the other content on our channel. And if you want to follow along and travel with me around the world and see how I run my amazing travel brands and get some great tips on how to grow your own, make sure you check out that other content. I'm going to drop a couple videos here. Click those links. I'll see you next time. Bye guys.